Okay, let's run through a few of the new features that have been added to the bulk publishing WordPress plugin since the last template or video that you would have seen. We have Upload CSV, which now has the download CSV example, which makes it so much easier because now you know exactly what variables are going to connect with the existing sheet data and you're not going to have new columns created. It also means that we can now add the categories using this method. So we've got the parent category and then any subcategories would be after the arrow, just like this. So the example CSV just helps make this a lot easier so you're not confused when you're trying to add parent or child categories. So you can do this all now from within the sheet. Another thing which was wildly requested, something that I was very, very adamant about getting done as soon as possible, was being able to upload your JPG files, your featured image files from within your sheet. So if you use a tool like in my 7-part mini course, you would have seen I've used a tool called Placid to create these featured images in bulk. So you can see an example of how that would be added to the sheet, so the exact URL, and then it will be uploaded as a featured image in the featured image column. I'm just going to add one row so you can see what it looks like once you have a row added. This is what your data would look like. We now have everything collapsed, so when you fill data in, it's not going to just start elongating to the point where it's very, very difficult to manage the sheet, which is another big update that I'm very happy about. When you want to add new variables, you simply add a new column. So new column 1, new column. What you name the column is what the variable is going to be called. You can't change the name of the variable, but you can, of course, change the content and the prompt. So the one thing you can't do in the sheet at the moment is set your prompt. So if you wanted to generate an outline, you couldn't set this prompt from within the sheet. You'd have to do that on the actual plugin. But we have this example, so we're going to download the CSV and upload it. And then I'm going to show you a few more of the other features. So as you can see, we've got the main keyword content. The slug, again, is automatically generated from the main keyword in any case. But if you do want to override the main keyword settings, you can upload your own slugs in the columns. Titles, again, you can upload this on the CSV or generate your own with a prompt. And then the categories, as you can see, is added the parent category and then the child, and also you can see multiple categories selected. So if you didn't want to add multiple categories, you would just not put multiple categories in the spreadsheet. What we've also got is the ability to set all rows. So let's say you didn't want them in all of these rows, you only wanted it in the other category. You would just do set to all rows and it's going to update all of the others, which helps if you've generated your post and you've not uploaded it from a CSV or pre-selected categories. We're going to hide these again because we don't need them. And in the top right corner here, we've got credits. I'm just going to show you the credits. Credits are a new feature and they allow us to scrape research data and secondary keywords. And we're definitely going to be exploring more ways that we can use data scraping within the plugin itself. Let me go back over to the sheet. So again, you've got the secondary keywords column, which you can use the scrape credits to scrape your related keywords. And you can select what you want it to scrape from, whether that's the title. I recommend the main keyword, it's simple. But what it does is it will give you the search volume if it's found related keywords. So these are not people also ask or anything like that. These are related keywords. So to give an example, I'll make it simple. I'll just put something like cars and I'll put bikes. And this way you'll be able to see what it does when it actually finds related keywords to those terms. It's given the combined search volume for keywords related to cars, and then it's given the top keywords related to cars. And the same thing for bikes. It's got mountain bikes, men's bikes, boys' bikes, girls' bikes, and it's got the combined search volume for those terms. If the keyword is very, very obscure or very long tail, it's going to return a combination of AI generated keywords and scraped keywords. So if the search volume says 0, that's because it's mostly AI generated and there are no data backed keywords related to that main keyword. Outline, very simple, generate an outline and introduction. And if we come over to settings, we've got your API key here, you've got the prompt settings. We want to throw that up to GPT-4. There is some documentation in the knowledge base about frequency, presence penalty, and your settings in general. And then we've got column settings. We are going to change this from 1 by 1 to a selected number that you want to generate. This is mainly because when you try to generate all rows at once, everything is being generated on your site server, so that can cause the server to crash, and we don't want that. So we set it to generate 1 by 1, but in truth it could do 2 at a time, 3 at a time, depending on how much you're generating and what your rate limit is. If we're using GPT-4, our rate limits are all set in stone. If you're using 3.5, you've got quite a lot more room, so you might not need to set them to 1 by 1. But again, in the very near future, we're going to change this to a number that you can set. So if you want it to generate 2 at a time, 3 at a time, 4 at a time, you'll be able to do that. We can also set the secondary keywords as tags, and you can hide columns from here. So if you're not using anything, you can hide them from here. So to demonstrate the generate keywords 1 by 1, which I've just saved, introduction. If I hit generate column, it's going to generate the entire column, but 1 by 1. Over here, if we want to, let's just delete those again, or let's do outlines because it's a lot quicker. If you hit generate selected, of course, it's only going to generate the checkboxes selected. So I'm going to hit generate selected. None are selected. It's going to tell me to please select a row first. If I only want to do the 2 on the list, I can tell it generate selected, and it's going to just do those 2. Another thing that we've added is the checkbox. It's very simple, but you can just click and drag. I do want it so we can just click and drag the actual boxes and it will still check them. But this helps a lot if you have a bunch on your list and you want to deselect them quite quickly. We've done the categories. This icon here, which you'll see on all of the variables, is the prompt. And this is where you actually edit and create your prompt to help you generate the content in these cells. So new sample column, this is one that was imported in the sheet, so that's made its own variables. And if we come back over to settings, all of these prompt types can be edited individually. So we want to set our GPT-4 max tokens to 4,000. Because we're using HTML, I'm going to bring the presence penalty down to 3. You do really want to tweak these to get your best output. We had some dummy data in the first draft, so these are highlighted, and if we go to edit post, you'll see that was the content. So if you have the bulk publishing spreadsheet and you have a full sheet of content and you've got your first drafts already done and you just want to import that, you can do that using this tool as well, and you can add any additional things to the first draft that way. Likewise, you can rename the first draft column something like first draft 2 if you want to append that data or prepend it. For instance, you may have FAQs that you want to add to the content you already have in the spreadsheet. You can import it as first draft 2 and then add it as a variable in templates. And I'm aware that that is getting kind of complicated if you've not used the tool at all, but I'll show you how to do that in future videos. As you can see, it's imported and uploaded the featured image. So this will be pulled and stored locally in your media library, which means you don't have to worry about them expiring if you've used, which means you don't need to worry about them expiring if you've used Placid or another tool and they're temporarily on the server once you've got the URL in the spreadsheet, it's going to upload and store those on your site. View post is going to change very soon, so it's just a pop-up window and you can see what the post would be looking like with the template. And the templates are here. I don't have a great example here, but this is where you piece everything together. So you've got your first draft, you've got your introduction, you may have another section that you've generated. I like to have a column called contextual where I add additional internal links, and then you could throw that in there. And then your first draft would be your main body, and you just save that template. And you can create as many templates as you need. If you have a product 1 versus product 2 template, review, listicle, whatever it is, you can create your templates and get very, very granular with these templates, because this is by far the best feature of the bulk publishing AI WordPress plugin. I've been going so crazy with these templates, adding all kinds of HTML reusable blocks. I put my table of contents in from here, I put spaces in, I put all kinds of reusable blocks that I've made to format my posts. They can all be thrown in here as HTML. So definitely play around with templates and make the most of that. Now, although we have some dummy content in the first draft, I'm going to use this outline because it's already here just to generate a post and see how this goes. This is the generic first draft prompt. I wouldn't recommend just using it as is. It's just to show you how you can use variables, but I would definitely further tweak this to include things regarding the tone and the structure of the post and things that I'd want it to include. Of course, I'd have more variables that I'm asking it to take into consideration when it's creating the prompt. You can also take this opportunity to add your internal linking. So if you have a sitemap you want to paste in, you can tell it to link to these posts and then put the sitemap below. All sorts of things you could do. There's no limits of what you can do from the variable and first draft perspective. So let me make some tweaks to this. We've got create a 1200 word blog post. And just a tip, it's not going to follow this. It's not going to necessarily follow this. You could do things like tell it to write 3 paragraphs underneath every subheading and things like that. It's going to look at that and take that into consideration more than it would this arbitrary number that you give it. So that's just some food for thought. So I'm going to add some tweaks to the formatting. So the post should follow this outline and be formatted in H2. I'm going to say H2. I'm going to put it in H2 HTML tags. And you want to give it examples where possible just to reduce the room for error. So bold key phrases with E tags. And just to demonstrate what it looks like when you add spaces in and things like that, I'm going to add a spacer and I'm going to add a separator. I'm going to make it green just so we can see it. And we want the HTML for these, so you're going to go over to code editor and we've got the spacer. Let's make it a bit smaller. So we want the spacer, and there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can add those into your template. So instead of BR tags, you can just put your spacers in. But what I like to do is input a spacer, in brackets, the spacer, before each H2 tag. And let's save that, and then we'll just put the separators in as well so you can see that. Very, very basic example of how you can start to use your things like reusable blocks and HTML to help you pre-format your content. So I'm gonna just place these. You want to space these out so you can see what you're doing. Let's just generate some introductions again. And again, these introductions and this generated content has very, very little instruction. So these are generic. This is what you're going to get when you don't guide it on tone. You don't tell it what not to do. And this is also GPT 3.5 on that. The first draft is set to GPT 4, but this is set to GPT 3.5. So this introduction's, I think, 2,000 tokens long, and GPT 3 and unguided. So there's that. But now we are going to generate the first drafts. It was supposed to be an introduction, so this is the first block, which was, again, supposed to be an introduction. I'm going to delete that because it's making it hard to see everything else. But as you can see, it's put the separators in, then this would be another section, then you've got the spacer. It's done the introduction, and it's, again, listened to the instructions in the first draft, where I've told it to put spacers before H2 headings, and where I've told it to bold key phrases and use BR to break things apart. I think I told it to do that. So yeah, very, very basic, but if you tell it to do something, it will, as long as you reduce the frequency and presence penalty. So that's done, and what I'm going to do now is just publish these. You can schedule it, so you can set it to publish in the future, or you can backdate it by saying they were published between these dates. Hit schedule, and they're going to be removed from here. Here is what the post looks like. The featured image is there, and yeah, this is obviously a terribly formatted site, but this is a basic install with full site. Of course, you want to have your site completely ready. Again, that is a very, very basic run through of the tool. You could definitely look forward to the case study where I can demonstrate exactly how I'm using the bulk publishing AI WordPress plugin, and also how I edit them on the front end.